All right, so today we are going to learn how to use Kontakt in Logic Pro X. So you want to start by creating a new project. It's important to not select Open Library and to create a multi-timbral software instrument. So for this one, I'm going to do 12 parts. It's probably more than I need, but just to be safe. So create, now we're going to add our Kontakt. And in this case, what we want to do is Kontakt 5 multi-output, and I'm going to do 8 stereo, 8 mono. All right, so let's add our instruments. I'm going to do Studio Drummer, Session Kit Full, Scarby Bass, and I'm going to do New York Concert Grand Pop version. And finally, I'm going to add just a synth pad. All right, and then the next thing we need to do is make sure that our outputs are configured. So we're going to go add channels. I'm going to add first 8 stereo channels. You want to change this to the very first open channel, and we'll do delete existing channels. So create that, and then we're going to add 8 mono channels. So for this one, you want to just start at the whatever channel is free after your 8 stereo channels. So in this case, mine is showing up as that, but yours may be different. And this time you don't want to do delete existing channels. Now for me, since I'm going to use a completely different setup if I'm using another program like Pro Tools, it's actually better if I go down here to the presets batch configuration and use save current output section state as default for audio unit plugins, which is what Logic uses. Next thing we want to do is assign our outputs. So first I'm going to start with the Studio Drummer. We're going to go to the mixer. Okay, so we want to set outputs for our overhead stereo and our room. Now, just because of the nature of how Logic works, it's better if you just skip stereo channel 1. So we're going to go here to settings with overhead stereo selected. We're going to start with stereo 2. Then we're going to go to room, and we'll change that to stereo 3. All right. Now, one thing it's a good idea to do is just mute that mono channel. Otherwise, it ends up giving you a mono version of your overhead stereo. Also, not a bad idea to just turn off your effects on both of those, because you probably want to use Logic effects for that. Okay, so next thing we want to do is do our mono outputs. Okay, and you might want to also change your mic placements for some of these as they come by. Okay, so we're going to set our kick to mono 9, and we'll turn off that EQ. And I turned up the inner mic as well as the outer mic. And then snare, we'll turn up the bottom mic a little more. And let's just turn off the bleed. So this controls whether your snare bleeds into the other mics. And so just easier mixing wise to change that. All right, so hi-hat. Let's turn off our EQ. Oh, forgot to set the output for the snare. So that's going to be mono 10. Hi-hat will be mono 11. One thing you want to do with the hi-hat is, for some reason, the mono output won't work if it's panned all the way left. So let's just change that to a little bit less. All right, and then our 16th mono output will be the bass. Okay, so now we used stereo 2 for the overhead, stereo 3 for the room. So we're going to use stereo 4 for the piano, and then stereo 5 for the synth pad. I'm going to set up separate MIDI track for each part of the drum kit. So we're going to make this the kick, but instead I'm going to call it MIDI kick. My drum kit is instrument 1 in here. So, and notice here it says MIDI channel 1. So that's what we want to assign all of those to. So you just right click on it, you go reassign track, and you just make sure it's set to software instrument 1. Okay, and then this is our bass, so MIDI bass, and that should be software instrument 2, and then this is MIDI piano, and that's going to be instrument 3, and then MIDI synth pad, and we'll make that instrument 4. Okay, now with these 4 right here, if I want to keep them around just in case I need them, just best to hide them. And I can always bring them back by clicking the little H thing there. Okay, let's open up our mix window. All right, now we want to have an output track for each stereo and mono output we set up. So you just click the little plus sign here. And that gives us our 8 stereo outs and our 8 mono outs. Okay, and then we should probably also rename these. Okay, then it's at this point that I usually try to color code things. Now, for these tracks, the next thing we want to do is create a track in our main window. So then let's do one for all of these as well. So now these tracks have showed up here. And we can click assign track color and it'll give us all the colors. All right, now the only ones is our MIDI tracks ended up still staying green. So I'm going to change these drum MIDI tracks so that they're also red. We'll add this color here, match that color. We'll pull the synth pad track down by the MIDI track for it, and we'll match that color. And we'll pull the piano part down with the MIDI piano part, and we'll match that color on the MIDI piano here. So the other kind of possible thing you might want to do is you've got these aux tracks. You might want to just mute them for now because you don't really need them. Okay, so I've done a cheesy short little 1, 3 minor, 4, 5 sequence here for those 4 parts. Now, one thing when you're doing this and you're testing levels at first, not a bad idea to go into pre-fader metering in the mix window and then open up your Kontakt and check that all the levels are going pretty well. So you can check on your outputs here and make sure that they're set loud enough, and then kind of look at your faders right there. And then once you're done with that, take it out of pre-fader metering and you can start doing your mixing. Okay, so now because you've got separate outputs for each of these instruments, you can turn them up or down. And then the only other thing you may want to do at some point is to show the faders for your MIDI tracks on the mixer. Now, this can have unexpected results sometimes, but what you do is you just go to the View menu and you select all tracks with the same channel strip instrument. It may not retain your instrument names, like as you can see here, all of those drum parts are just called main out here. So so the usefulness of that is a little bit limited. And this may just be a logic bug that they're going to eventually fix. But so that's how to use Kontakt as a multi-channel instrument in Logic Pro X. Thanks.